What happens when country music's golden girl walks into the lion's den and finds herself facing the most hostile interview of her career? Today, we're diving into the explosive confrontation that left Carrie Underwood shaken, the View panel divided, and millions of viewers picking sides. This is the story of how one morning show appearance turned into a career-defining moment that nobody saw coming. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about celebrity interviews that go completely off the rails. The morning started like any other at the View studios. In New York City, Carrie Underwood was scheduled for what was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance, discussing her latest album and upcoming tour dates. The show's producers had booked her specifically because she represented the kind of mainstream appeal that could boost their ratings during a particularly competitive ratings period. Whoopi Goldberg opened the show with her usual energy, introducing the panel and briefly mentioning their upcoming guest. Joy Behar, known for her sharp tongue and political commentary, seemed particularly animated that morning. Sarah N. and Alyssa Farah Griffin took their usual positions, while Sunny Hostin shuffled through her notes with an expression that suggested she had something specific on her mind. The conversation before Carrie's entrance was surprisingly tame, focusing on lighter topics like upcoming holiday plans and recent entertainment news. But there was an undercurrent of tension that regular viewers might have picked up on. Something in the way Joy kept glancing at her notes, and the slight edge in Whoopi's voice when she mentioned their guest. When the commercial break ended, Whoopi's introduction was warm enough. Our next guest is a country music superstar with multiple Grammy Awards and millions of fans worldwide. Please welcome Carrie Underwood. The audience applauded enthusiastically. As Carrie walked out, her smile bright and professional, waving to the crowd with the confidence of someone who had done thousands of interviews. She settled into the guest chair, exchanging pleasantries with the panel. "Thank you so much for having me," Carrie said, her voice carrying that familiar Oklahoma warmth that had endeared her to fans for nearly 2 decades. "It's always great to be in New York." Joy leaned forward slightly, her expression friendly but with something calculating behind her eyes. "Carrie, we're so excited to have you here. Your new album has been getting amazing reviews." "Thank you. That means the world to me," Carrie replied, clearly in her comfort zone, discussing her music. "This album was really personal for me. I spent a lot of time writing songs that reflected where I am in my life right now, both as an artist and as a person." Sunny Hostin nodded approvingly. "The title track has been climbing the charts. Can you tell us about the inspiration behind it?" For the next few minutes, the conversation flowed smoothly. Carrie discussed her creative process, her collaboration with various songwriters, and her excitement about the upcoming tour. Her responses were polished but genuine, the kind of interview content that both the show and her publicist would be happy with. Sarah N. jumped in with questions about balancing career and family life, a topic Carrie handled with practiced ease. "It's definitely a juggling act," she admitted, "but I'm blessed to have an incredible support system. My husband and kids understand that music is part of who I am, and I try to make sure that when I'm home, I'm really present." The audience was clearly enjoying the conversation, laughing at Carrie's anecdotes about life on the road and her children's reactions to her fame. Everything seemed to be going exactly as planned, the kind of smooth, promotional interview that morning shows thrive on. But then, Joy Behar's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. She glanced down at her notes, then back up at Carrie, with a look that seasoned View watchers would recognize immediately. It was the look that preceded some of the show's most memorable confrontations. "Carrie," Joy began, her tone still conversational, but with an edge creeping in. "Your music has always resonated with a pretty specific demographic, country music fans, particularly in certain parts of the country. How do you feel about the responsibility that comes with having that kind of influence?" The question caught Carrie slightly off guard. It wasn't the direction she had expected the interview to take, and there was something in Joy's phrasing that suggested this wasn't just casual curiosity. "Well," Carrie said carefully, "I've always believed that music should bring people together. I try to write songs that speak to universal experiences: love, heartbreak, family, faith." Joy nodded, but her follow-up came quickly. "But don't you think there's more to it than that? I mean, your fan base is pretty concentrated in red states, rural areas, places where certain political views are, shall we say, more popular." The studio seemed to grow quieter. Whoopi glanced at Joy with a look that might have been warning, while the other panelists shifted uncomfortably. Carrie's smile remained in place, but those watching closely could see the slight tension in her shoulders. "I don't really think about politics when I'm writing music," Carrie responded diplomatically. "My job is to entertain people, to give them something that speaks to their hearts. Music has always been about connecting with people on an emotional level, regardless of their background or beliefs." Joy leaned back in her chair, clearly not satisfied with that answer. "But surely, you understand that your platform comes with influence. When you have millions of followers on social media, when you sell out arenas across the country, people look to you for guidance. They want to know where you stand on the issues that matter. The tension in the room was becoming palpable. Carrie took a subtle deep breath before responding. I've always tried to keep my personal political views private. I think people come to my concerts to escape from all that, to just enjoy music and have a good time. I don't want to alienate anyone or make them feel like they can't enjoy my music because we might disagree on something. It was a reasonable response, the kind of diplomatic answer that most celebrities give when pressed on political topics. But Joy Behar was just getting started, and what happened next would turn this routine interview into something much more explosive. Joy's eyes lit up with the kind of intensity that regular view watchers knew meant trouble was coming. She shuffled her cards deliberately, creating a moment of dramatic pause that seemed to stretch forever in the suddenly tense studio. See, that's interesting, Carrie, Joy said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. Because staying neutral, staying silent, that's actually a choice too, isn't it? Especially when you're making millions of dollars from fans who might be voting against their own interests. Carrie's professional smile flickered for just a moment. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand what you're getting at. Joy leaned forward, clearly relishing the moment. What I'm getting at is this: your music, your brand. It's all wrapped up in this wholesome, family values image. Church-going, God-fearing, traditional American values. But when real issues come up, issues that affect your fans' lives, their healthcare, their jobs, their rights, you go mysteriously quiet. The other panelists were now visibly uncomfortable. Whoopi tried to interject. Joy, maybe we should, but Joy was on a roll and wasn't about to be stopped. No, Whoopi, I think this is important, because Carrie here has built her entire career on connecting with working-class Americans, people who trust her, who look up to her, and when those same people are being fed lies about elections, about vaccines, about climate change, she just stays in her lane and counts her money. Carrie's composure was clearly being tested, but she maintained her professionalism. Joy, with respect, I think you're making some assumptions about me and my fans that just aren't fair. I've never claimed to be a political figure. I'm an entertainer. An entertainer, Joy repeated mockingly. Right, just an entertainer who happens to perform at venues where Confederate flags wave in the parking lot. Just an entertainer whose concerts are basically Trump rallies with better music. The audience gasped audibly. Sarah N. looked mortified, while Sunny Hostin stared at Joy with obvious concern. This was crossing lines that even The View's famously combative format rarely approached. Carrie's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath. Now, that's completely unfair. Joy, I have fans from all walks of life, from every political background. I've performed for troops overseas, for disaster relief efforts, for charity events across the political spectrum. To suggest that I somehow endorse or encourage extremism is not only wrong, it's hurtful. Joy wasn't backing down. Is it wrong though? Because when your silence gives comfort to people who want to overturn elections, who want to deny women health care, who want to pretend climate change isn't real, how is that not a form of endorsement? My silence is an endorsement. Carrie shot back, her Oklahoma accent becoming more pronounced as her emotions rose. My silence is respect for the fact that my fans are intelligent people who can make their own decisions without needing a country singer to tell them how to vote. Joy laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Intelligent people, right, the same intelligent people who think vaccines contain microchips and that the election was stolen. Those intelligent people. Whoopi finally managed to break in. Joy, I think we need to know, Whoopi, Carrie said, her voice now carrying real anger. Let her finish. I want to hear exactly what Joy thinks about the millions of people who support my music. Joy was more than happy to oblige. What I think, Carrie, is that you've made a calculated business decision to stay quiet on important issues. Because you know the truth about your fan base. You know that if you came out and said that climate change is real, that vaccines save lives, that the election wasn't stolen, you'd lose money. So you stay quiet and let them believe whatever conspiracy theory makes them feel better. The studio was dead silent except for the subtle hum of cameras. Carrie stared at Joy for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice was controlled but clearly furious. You want to know what I really think, Joy? I think you're sitting in your New York studio, making assumptions about people you've never met. Dismissing millions of Americans as stupid conspiracy theorists because they don't share your political views. I think you've decided that anyone who lives outside of major cities, anyone who goes to church, anyone who values tradition, must be some kind of dangerous extremist. Joy tried to interrupt, but Carrie was just getting started. You talk about my responsibility to use my platform, but what about your responsibility? You have a platform too, and you're using it right now to attack not just me, but everyone who enjoys my music. You're dividing people, creating hostility, making assumptions about character and intelligence based on geography and musical taste. The audience was completely riveted. This wasn't the polite, media-trained Carrie Underwood they were used to seeing. This was someone whose core values were being attacked, and she was fighting back. Joy regrouped quickly. I'm not attacking anyone, Carrie. I'm asking legitimate questions about the role of celebrity in our democracy. When misinformation is tearing our country apart, when people are dying because they won't get vaccinated, when our democracy itself is under attack, don't you think people with influence have a responsibility to speak up? And who decides what constitutes misinformation? Carrie fired back, you, the media, politicians. Because I've seen enough to know that what gets labeled as misinformation one day becomes accepted truth the next. I've seen enough to know that regular people, the people you seem to think are so easily manipulated, often have better instincts than the experts who talk down to them. Sunny Hostin tried to mediate. I think what Joy is trying to say is that, with great influence comes great responsibility. Carrie turned to Sunny, her expression slightly softer, but still intense. And I take that responsibility seriously, Sunny. But my responsibility is to my art, to my family, and to treating my fans with respect. Not to become a political pundit just because I can carry a tune. Joy wasn't finished. But Carrie, surely, you can see how your silence on certain issues sends a message. When you won't speak out against obvious wrongs, people interpret that silence. They interpret it how they want to interpret it, Carrie replied, just like you're interpreting it right now. You've decided that because I won't be your political spokesperson, I must be complicit in everything you disagree with. That's not fair, and it's not accurate. The tension in the room was now so thick it was almost suffocating. The other panelists looked like they wanted to disappear, while the audience sat in stunned silence, witnessing what was clearly becoming one of the most explosive interviews in The View's history. Joy gathered herself for what everyone could sense would be her biggest attack yet. She looked directly into Carrie's eyes, and when she spoke, her voice carried the kind of righteous anger that had made her both famous and infamous. Fine, Carrie, let's get specific then. Let's talk about what your silence really costs. Joy's pause was calculated, theatrical. She knew she had the audience's complete attention, and she was about to deliver what she clearly believed would be the knockout punch. Your silence costs lives. Carrie, Joy said, her voice dropping to a more serious tone. When you have a platform that reaches millions of people, and you choose to stay quiet while misinformation spreads through your fan base like wildfire, people die. They die from preventable diseases because they won't get vaccinated. They die in acts of political violence because they believe lies about stolen elections. Your precious neutrality has a body count. The words hit the studio like a physical blow. Sarah inaudibly gasped, and even Whoopi looked stunned by the directness of Joy's accusation. But if Joy expected Carrie to crumble under this attack, she had seriously miscalculated. Carrie sat perfectly still for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried more power than if she had shouted. How dare you, she said, each word measured and deliberate. How dare you sit there and accuse me of having blood on my hands because I won't be your political puppet. You don't know me, Joy. You don't know my heart. You don't know my values. And you certainly don't know the conversations I have with my family, my friends, and yes, my fans. Joy tried to interrupt, but Carrie held up her hand. No, you wanted to get specific. So let's get specific. You want to talk about responsibility? Let's talk about the responsibility of a television host who uses her platform to demonize half the country. Let's talk about the responsibility of someone who thinks she can judge the character of millions of people she's never met, based on their musical preferences. The energy in the room had shifted completely. Carrie was no longer on the defensive. She had found her footing and was launching a counterattack that caught Joy completely off guard. You talk about misinformation, Joy. But what about the misinformation you're spreading right now? What about the lie that everyone who doesn't share your political views is somehow dangerous or stupid? What about the lie that celebrity opinions should matter more than individual conscience? Joy's face was flushed, clearly not expecting this level of pushback. I never said people were stupid, Carrie. I said they were being misled. By who? Carrie shot back immediately. By their pastors, by their neighbors, by their own experiences, or just by anyone who doesn't get their information from the same sources you do. Because that's what this is really about, isn't it? It's not about responsibility or influence. It's about control. Sunny Hostin tried to interject again. I don't think anyone is trying to control anyone, Carrie. Carrie turned to Sunny, her expression intense but not hostile. Aren't they, Sunny? Because what I'm hearing is that I should use my platform to promote specific political viewpoints. And if I don't, I'm somehow responsible for everything bad that happens. That sounds like control to me. Joy had regained her composure and was ready to fire back. What you call control, I call civic responsibility. When you have influence, you have an obligation to use it for good. And who decides what's good? Carrie asked, her voice rising slightly. You, the media, politicians in Washington. Because I've got news for you, Joy. The people who listen to my music, They're not mindless sheep waiting for celebrities to tell them how to think. They're teachers and nurses and farmers and small business owners. They're military families and single mothers and grandparents trying to make sense of a world that seems to change every day. The audience was completely captivated. This wasn't just a political argument anymore. This was a fundamental clash of worldviews, and both women were fighting with everything they had. Joy leaned forward aggressively. Those same teachers and nurses and farmers are getting their medical advice from Facebook memes and their political information from conspiracy websites. Don't you think someone with your influence should try to steer them toward reliable sources? Carrie's laugh was sharp and humorless. Reliable sources? You mean sources that agree with you? Because heaven forbid someone might look at the same information you have and come to a different conclusion. Heaven forbid someone might have different priorities or different values or different life experiences that shape how they see the world. Some conclusions are objectively wrong. Carrie, Joy insisted. The earth is round. Vaccines save lives. Climate change is real. These aren't matters of opinion. And I've never said otherwise, Carrie replied firmly. But what you're really upset about isn't that I'm spreading misinformation, it's that I'm not spreading your information. There's a difference. Whoopi finally managed to break in with more authority. Ladies, I think we're getting a little heated here. But Carrie wasn't done. No, Whoopi, I want to finish this, because Joy accused me of having blood on my hands, and I think that deserves a response. She turned back to Joy, and her next words cut through the tension like a knife. You want to talk about responsibility? Let's talk about the responsibility of a media personality who thinks the best way to reach people is to insult them, to mock their beliefs, to dismiss their concerns as ignorance or bigotry. How many minds do you think you've changed with that approach? Joy, how many people have you brought over to your side by calling them stupid? Joy's mouth opened, but for once, she seemed at a loss for words. Carrie pressed her advantage. Because here's what I know about the people who listen to my music. They've been talked down to by politicians, by media, by celebrities for years. They've been told their values are outdated, their beliefs are dangerous, their concerns don't matter, and then they turn on the television and see someone like you confirming everything they already believed about how coastal elites really feel about them. The studio was dead silent. Even the camera operators seemed to have stopped moving. So, congratulations, Joy, Carrie continued, her voice now carrying a mixture of anger and sadness. You've just spent the last 10 minutes proving to millions of people that everything they suspected about media bias and coastal contempt was absolutely right. If your goal was to change hearts and minds, you've failed spectacularly. If your goal was to drive people further apart, well, mission accomplished. Joy finally found her voice, but it lacked the confident edge she had started with. I wasn't trying to insult anyone, Carrie. I was trying to have an honest conversation about the role of public figures in our democracy. Carrie shook her head slowly. No, Joy, you were trying to bully me into becoming your political spokesperson, and when I wouldn't play along, you decided to attack not just me, but everyone who supports my music. That's not an honest conversation. That's exactly the kind of behavior that makes people trust media less, not more. The weight of what had just happened was settling over everyone in the studio. This wasn't just a heated interview anymore. This was a moment that would be replayed, analyzed, and debated for weeks to come. And judging by the expressions on the panelists' faces, everyone knew it. The silence that followed Carrie's devastating takedown seemed to stretch for an eternity. Joy Behar, who had built her career on having the last word, sat speechless, her face a mixture of shock and barely contained fury. The other panelists looked like they were witnessing a car crash in slow motion, unable to look away but clearly wishing they were anywhere else. Whoopi Goldberg, veteran of countless television confrontations, finally found her voice. Well, she said, trying to inject some levity into the moment, I think we've certainly had an honest conversation here. But the damage was done, and everyone in the studio knew it. Carrie sat perfectly composed, her hands folded in her lap, but her eyes were still blazing with the intensity of someone who had just fought the battle of her life and won. Sarah N., clearly desperate to salvage something from the wreckage, tried to pivot. Carrie, maybe we could talk about your upcoming tour dates. Get back to why you're here today. Carrie turned to Sarah with a smile that was both gracious and slightly sad. You know what, Sarah, I think we've covered everything that needs to be covered today. But I do want to say something directly to your viewers. She looked straight into the camera, and when she spoke, her voice carried the same authentic warmth that had made her a star, but with an underlying strength that felt different, more mature. To everyone watching this, whether you're a fan of my music or not, I want you to know that I believe in you. I believe in your ability to think for yourselves, to make good decisions for your families, to care about your communities. I don't think you need celebrities or politicians or media personalities to tell you what to believe or how to vote. You're smart enough to figure that out on your own. Joy shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly wanting to respond but apparently thinking better of it. Carrie continued, and to my fans specifically,